Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Q Talks. It is raining right now, so if you notice I'm a little bit wet, that's fine. Hopefully the rain doesn't interrupt the noise though. I'm happy to say that finally my AC is fixed. It had been broken for about a month now, and it's been kind of hot in the house. We had a window unit that we kept in our bedroom. We stuck the kids in there. But on today's episode, I wanted to talk about, I had recorded an episode previously, and it was about the existence of God, and I went over some arguments and why we should believe in God. And I was kind of happy how the video turned out, but I realized that if I posted that, it would be video number 25 million on why God exists and why you should believe. And there are people who can articulate that a lot better than me. People like William Lane Craig, for example. William Lane Craig's one of the best apologists. Norman Geisler. I could go on and on. People who are articulate, very smart, intelligent. People who are not me. And then you can listen to all those if you want to hear about arguments for God's existence. But I've been thinking about something recently that I wanted to share that I don't hear very often from people, including smart apologists. And it is a response to the argument against God's existence, and that is the argument of evil and suffering, which basically says that a good, all-powerful, all-knowing God, knows that evil is going to happen or suffering is going to happen. He knows it and has the ability to prevent it, but doesn't, then he must not be all-loving. Or if he can't prevent it, then he's not all-powerful. And if he doesn't know it's going to happen, then he's not omniscient. It's a trifecta, trilemma. And I find this argument to be relatively weak because of that first point, that there's definitely very little controversy over God being all-knowing and all-powerful, but the conclusion that God is all-loving, that he can't be all-loving if evil happens, I believe is false. And I actually believe that the existence of evil and suffering is a great advantage for theistic Christians. So I kind of want to talk about that today. And what I mean by that when I say a great advantage is that if God did not exist, you still have, let's say for argument's sake that God doesn't exist. Well, you still have the same amount of evil and suffering. And you can even argue that in societies that are secular, there's more evil. And I'm not talking about societies like Scandinavian countries that historically were religious and they're not anymore. I'm talking about societies that never knew God, like tribes in Africa and stuff like that. Practice cannibalism and slavery. Very evil. And so the question is, what is the purpose, or what is the point of the trials and sufferings that you go through if God doesn't exist? Well, I'll tell you what the answer is from the atheist perspective. There is none. That's the atheist answer to that question. I've never received another answer I've never heard another answer from an atheist other than that. What is the purpose, or what is the point? What is the meaning of my suffering? Well, there is none. It's purposeless suffering. Okay. Well, that to me is a worse answer than any response that I've ever heard from Christians about the existence of God. And I've heard some that are good, and I've heard some that are not so good. But the answer that the atheists give, I feel like, is worse. So if you just turn the question around, if you get asked the question from a Christian or theist perspective, okay, God exists, but there's evil. How do you explain that? You say, okay, hold on, pause. I'm going to give my answer, but first, can I ask you the same question from your perspective. If God doesn't exist, then what is the purpose of evil and suffering? Looks like we've got a road closure up ahead. I'm not going to be able to get around it. Gonna have to back up. And so because of this, I think that is a pretty good answer from the theist perspective. Now, let's see, I gotta make sure I back up into these people's yards and don't wreck my car. Okay, looks like we're in the clear. So that's point number one. Point number one, if God didn't exist, there would be no purpose of evil and suffering, which is a worse reality than if God does exist and can prevent the evil but chooses not to. Okay. Point number two on how to turn this back around is a more ontological question. What is evil? Okay. Evil is the opposite of good. So in order to know what evil is, you have to know what good is. Well, right off the bat, now we have a hard question from the secular perspective, because what is good? You could ask a secularist that question. What is good? What is what we ought to do as human beings? What ought we do? Should we do this or should we do that? How do we know that we need to do that? And from the atheist perspective, we run into a problem, because from the atheist perspective, if you ask them why it is wrong to, let's say, why is murder wrong? They'll say that murder is wrong because it hurts other people. Why is it wrong to hurt other people? Well, because I wouldn't want to be hurt, and hurting is something that I think is wrong. Well, you'll notice that answer is not objective, it's subjective. It's similar to somebody preferring chocolate over vanilla. Well, what if I think it's okay to hurt somebody? Why am I objectively wrong? But in atheism, if God doesn't exist, there is no objective standard for why it's wrong. So from the Christian perspective, there is an objective standard to why good exists, which therefore proves that evil does exist, which means from the atheist perspective, good and evil aren't actually objective things. They're subjective metaphysical realities that wouldn't actually exist. And what is right and what is wrong, what we ought to do, is actually just led to personal preference, so to speak. So what is evil? Evil is the absence of good. What is good? Well, you can't answer that question from an objective standard apart from the existence of God. So there wouldn't even be good without God, essentially. So that's one of the reasons why I believe that this is an advantage from the Christian perspective that we can use to turn around. And I don't believe that Christians should shy away from this question. I notice that whenever some Christians are asked this question, they tend to kind of shy away from it and not really want to answer the question as they should. But I think that this is a point that actually helps prove the existence of God and proves why atheism is false. And it just needs to be articulated well back to the atheist. And one of the reasons why I think that this is strong for the atheist, but once you think about it often, it doesn't become as strong, is because it's a very emotional argument. I think that when you talk about, for example, children getting cancer, it's very emotional, and it's difficult to separate the emotion from the philosophy aspect of it. It's very difficult to do that. It's very easy to get caught in the weeds and think that not actually use your reason and logic when we're thinking about it. But whenever I use my, take the emotional aspect of it and think about it, I can't think of any reason as to why objectively evil and suffering would be a reason as to why God doesn't exist. Okay, I think that's all the thoughts I have about that. Bit of a shorter video, but I hope this was helpful for you guys. Maybe you're struggling with this question, struggling with going through something. I'll be praying for you. Hope that you can rest on the reality that you're evil, that you're suffering, that whatever evil, injustice you're going through has a purpose. You're going through it for a reason. If God didn't exist, you would be going through that for no reason, and that's terrible. But God does exist, and He does love you. He promises to work out all things for good for those who are called according to His purpose, and that He will turn it around and turn it for His good. Okay, so God bless. May the Lord keep you, bless you, make His face to shine upon you. I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you on the next video. Goodbye, everybody.